Hi, and welcome to another episode of Content Marketing and today we're going to be looking at content marketing and Shark Tank. Now, Shark Tank is probably my favorite reality show, and it's a really great, gives a lot of information on business and how to be a great entrepreneur and how to start a business from the financial side, and really great. But there's also a lot of content marketing lessons that we can learn from the show. So that's what I really want to go into today. So essentially, I imagine most people watch Shark Tank, but essentially what happens is people apply to be onto the show, and if they get through all the initial rounds, initial things, they have a chance to pitch to sharks, which are essentially 5 of very successful entrepreneurs, and they pitch them on their business and then offer them a piece of their business in return for money. Mark Cuban, Daymond John, Kevin O'Leary are some of the sharks that are on there on a regular basis. And the most important lesson that what I found really interesting on this show, and one of the criticisms that some of the sharks always have for the people who are pitching to them when they don't want to take a deal or they fight too hard to get a deal or anything like that, is they start asking them, are you even on the show to get a deal? And the reason why they ask that is they know that the promotion alone from being on a television show with how many eyes are on it can create a lot of buzz and a lot of sales for the product regardless of whether or not they get a sale. So it certainly has become a tactic of some entrepreneurs to get on the show, not get a deal so they don't have to give any other business away, and essentially create an awesome promotion for their product. On the show, the sharks always criticize these people. But how can you? I mean, it's like the best ad you can get. It's an amazing promotion for your product. As long as you do a pretty cool pitch and you have a product which is pretty cool, even if it's not that cool, it seems to have a lot of success. But the lesson that I'm trying to get across all of this is that if you create one piece of awesome promotion, so I'm always talking about content on this. If you can create that one awesome piece of content, that can, that can live for your company for ages. You can live off of it for ages. So whenever I use the Breville blender example that Andrew Davis always mentions, created one awesome documentary, and essentially that's fueled their content forever. And it's actually made their brand very successful just off this one piece of content. But what's important is, even more important than even creating that awesome piece of content, is how do you promote that? How do you get your brand out there? How do you get your product for people to even hear it? So it's important that you always have somebody looking at ways that you can have one awesome piece of promotion that can get your content out there. So this is beyond obviously things like paid ads and organic, use SEO, use paid. All of those tactics are great, and I encourage you to use those. But I'd always dedicate, if you can, somebody's time to finding that one awesome type of promotion that can really get them on the map. If you're featured on a news program because of something you did. But in this case, when we look at Shark Tank, so what you're seeing here is coat checks, which was essentially a product where it was like a mobile coat check thing, where you'd set it up in hotels and bars, restaurants where they didn't have a coat check, and people just could, through their mobile phone, easily pay for this, get a ticket for it on their phone, and coat their check, like in bars where it's really crowded bars where it's difficult in the winter to put your coat anywhere. It's a really good idea. None of the sharks actually picked this up. But it's become one of the most successful products in Shark Tank that didn't get picked up. And just to give you an idea of, this is looking at Google Trends here. You can see right around, the end of 2012 when coat checks went onto the show, the volume just spiked. You can actually go on Shark Tank and look at any product, and you're going to see similar spikes for this. And what's interesting is, besides some Shark Tank updates where they've mentioned it, Shark Tank hasn't really mentioned anything since, but because of that one big brand promotion for them, that one pitch that he did on Shark Tank, you can see the interest in it is still has its spikes, its valleys, but is overall doing very, very successfully, and this guy's doing great. And he hustled and bustled to get onto Shark Tank, and I think this guy actually did want a deal. It wasn't about just getting on there for the promotion, but just getting that one piece of promotion really helped him out. And this even applies to one of the actual sharks. So Daymond John is the founder, CEO, president of Fubu, which is an international clothing brand. And this is something that he just, started selling, like hats and things on the street. And the product was actually doing well. He was making quite a bit of money. But what he was constantly doing was he saw an opportunity in the hip-hop market that would really work for his clothes. So what he started doing was sending samples to hip-hop artists, and he really targeted LL Cool J. and was always pushing him, always sending him notes, letters, please wear my product, sending the product, just wear my product, because he saw the value of having one big celebrity wear his brand, wear one of his pieces of clothing, was going to be enough to take it to another level. And that's exactly what happened. Eventually, LL Cool J in the early 90s wore a Fubu item of clothing in one of his music videos. And that was all that Fubu needed to get kick-started. Obviously, it took, need a lot of good products and a lot of good things past that. But that one, hustle, that one just constantly working and grinding to get a celebrity to wear his piece of clothing was the kickstart that it needed, and it became this international sensation, a brand that's still going strong to today. So Daymond John is taking kind of a playbook out of a lot of people who get on Shark Tank, which is, I just need to get exposure one time. You can't screw up after that, but if you just get one really big piece of promotion for your content or for your brand itself, that's huge. Now, once you've done it once, this isn't just something for brands who are trying to get known. This is also a tactic that you have to employ for brands that are already well established. So let's take Red Bull. Red Bull has no problem being established. These trends lines are a little deceiving because they're always successful. Red Bull is one of the best content marketing companies in the world, in my opinion. But look at this, and look at this one spike in October in 2012. And that was when Red Bull decided to sponsor putting a man to do the highest, the highest skydive, where he actually broke the sound barrier. And essentially it was you watch this guy for 2-3 hours just ascend, and I was glued to my television just watching it. And of course the Red Bull brand is everywhere on it. And it applies so perfectly for the audience. The world of Red Bull, extreme sports, doing extreme things. You can't get more extreme than this, right? This elevated their brand to an even another level for that time frame. It really resonated with their audience. It captured people who weren't even into Red Bull to tune in to get an even stronger brand. It was absolutely huge. So Red Bull and a lot of other brands are always constantly looking for this one big, not just type of content, but how do they promote that content out there? So how does this apply to content marketing? It's more of a tactic of how to enhance it. First and foremost, obviously know your audience, learn your audience, know that a piece of content or your brand is going to be very valuable and unique for your audience, and they're going to get something out of it, and it speaks to your brand value, it speaks to your brand voice. Everything else is the same, so create that. So to use the Breville example, they knew it was important to promote a healthy lifestyle. That's what people who are into blenders were interested in, so they created a documentary around some guy juicing his way back to health. Okay, and that was great. They put it on Netflix for free, and it became very successful. But once you've created that piece of content, you also have to have another marketing team, if it's an individual, if it's a team, or just a collective effort of always looking for the best place and opportunity to get that product out there. Celebrity endorsements is always going to be one of the primary tactics that you can use. It's always successful. It's not going away anytime soon. Sometimes it happens by accident. Most recent case was on Valentine's Day when Beyonce released her new song. She mentioned Red Lobster, and just mentioned the lyrics in the song Foundation. I'm actually going to do a whole episode on this in a little bit. And their sales went through the roof and went up 33% right after that. So all she did was mention the brand. Now this wasn't, Red Lobster wasn't doing a pitch to her to get it in there, but it's an example of, even by accident, this one promotional piece was great. So that's what I employ. It's not just about creating that content, it's about how do you get that content out there. And as well as using your regular tactics, your page, your SEO, word of mouth, all great, but look for those big opportunities. And although it might take a lot of investment, it might take years to even get that, it's worth it, because all you need is that one big promotional opportunity, that one big pitch, if you will, if you look at Shark Tank, to really elevate your brand to another level and elevate your sales and everything. So thank you for tuning in, and I will talk to you again next week.